In this video, I am going to discuss about types of molding sand and characteristics of molding sand. Principal raw material used in molding is the molding sand. Molding sand is a material which is used for making sand mold. And the principal constituents of the molding sand are, there are three elements which act as principal constituent of the molding sand. First one is silica, 86 to 90%, alumina, Al2O3, 4 to 8%, and iron oxide, Fe2O3, 2 to 5%. So these three are the principal constituents which is used in the sand for making sand mold. In a part of that, a small amount of oxides of titanium, manganese and calcium and some alkaline compounds are also adding to improve the properties of sand mixture. So basically the sand mixture consists silica, alumina, iron oxide. The sand which is used for building sand casting mold are basically classified into natural sand and synthetic sand. So first of all, natural sand. Natural sand, it is also known as green sand, and it is collected from natural resources. In the case of natural sand, water acts as the binder. It has the advantage of maintaining moisture for a long time. So natural sand which have the advantage of maintaining moisture for a long time. Okay. And second classification is synthetic sand. Synthetic sand is basically an artificial sand prepared by mixing clay and free sand and adding some binder. It is water plus bentonite. So bentonite, that is a chemical compound which is also act as a binder in the case of synthetic sand. Due to this chemical compound, the sand mold strength will be increasing. So these two are the basic classification of sand, natural sand and synthetic sand, which is used for making sand mold. So natural sand which is available from natural resources, it is also known as green sand. Water will act as the binding agent and it has the advantage of holding moisture for a long time. Synthetic sand is an artificial sand. It is prepared by mixing clay and free sand and adding binder, water plus bentonite. Due to the presence of bentonite, the strength of the synthetic sand is high when comparing to natural sand. Next one, types of molding sand. There are different types of molding sand is used for making sand mold. First one is green sand. Second one is dry sand. Third one is loam sand. Fourth one is facing sand. Fifth one is baking sand. Sixth one is system sand. Seventh one is parting sand. And last one is core sand. So these are the different classification of sand which is used for making sand casting mold. So first of all, green sand. See, green sand, it is a mixture of silica sand with 80 to 30% clay and a 6 to 8% water. So green sand mainly consists silica sand, clay and water. See, water will act as a binding agent. So it is a mixture of silica sand with 80 to 30% clay and 6 to 8% water. The clay and water give bonding strength to green sand. Clay and water that will provide the bonding strength to green sand. Second one is the dry sand. See, dry sand are commonly used for large casting. Mold prepared in green sand are dried or baked to remove almost all moisture of the sand. See, dry sand means basically it is a green sand. The mold is prepared by green sand and after that the moisture content is removed by baking process. Then it is known as dry sand. Third one is loam sand. Loam sand is basically visible in paste form. It is a mixture of clay and sand powder with water to a thin plastic paste. See, loam sand is seen as a paste form. It is a mixture of clay and sand powder with water. Then fourth one is the facing sand. See, facing sand. Facing sand is the sand which is directly used to nest to the surface of pattern. During sand casting process, the molten material directly contact the facing sand. As the molten material is directly contacted with the facing sand, this sand will be always subjected to most severe condition. So it should have high strength and refractoriness. It is made up of fresh silica sand and clay. So facing sand, that's a very important sand while making sand casting mold. Facing sand is always fresh sand. Reused sand are not used in the case of facing sand. Facing sand will be always directly contact with the pattern. While sand casting process, the molten material will be directly contact with the facing sand. So facing sand always face most severe condition in sand casting process. So it should have high strength and high refractoriness. Commonly, facing sand are made of fresh silica sand and clay. Fifth one is baking sand. See, baking sand are old repeatedly used molding sand, which is black in color due to the addition of coal dust and burning or coming in contact with the molten material. It is known as baking sand. So what's the meaning of baking sand? The old repeatedly used sand which is black in color which already contact with the molten material is known as baking sand. It is used to fill the mold back of facing layer. That's a very important point. What's the purpose of baking sand is which is commonly used for fill the mold back of facing layer. This facing sand not contact with the molten material. It is weak in bonding strength because the sharp edge of the sand grains become rounded due to high temperature of molten metal and burning of clay content. So it have less strength. There is no sharp edges for the baking sand because it is already contacted with the molten material and exposed to high temperature. So baking sand, that means its main purpose is to fill the bottom of facing sand. It is all repeatedly used sand. It have high strength. It is almost black in color and will not be contact with the molten material. And sixth one, system sand. System sand are commonly used for machine molding process. In the case of mass production, we have a machine system in order to fill the mold flask. In that case, we are using system sand. Seventh one is the parting sand. See, what's the purpose of a parting sand? The main purpose of parting sand is to prevent adhering the two part of the sand casting mold each other. The molding balls are separated from adhering to each other by spreading a fine, sharp, dry sand called parting sand. That's the important point of a parting sand. What's the purpose of the parting sand? So what's the purpose of a parting sand is? Parting sand is highly sharp, fresh silica sand. Before the mold is closing, copper and rack portion will be closing. This parting sand is sprayed over the surface. And after closing, due to this parting sand, the parting sand prevent the mold boxes adhering to each other. The other purpose of parting sand is which is used to keep the green sand from sticking from the patterns. So we have to remove the pattern easily from the sand casting mold after the mold has been prepared. If there is no parting sand, there is a chance that the green sand will be stick over the pattern and that will be also get removed some amount. To prevent that, after the pattern has been placed inside the flask, Initially, a parting sand will be sprinkled over the pattern. Then only green sand will be filled. So these are the two purposes of a parting sand in the case of sand casting mold. First one, it will prevent the molding boxes adhering to each other. Second, parting sand is also used to keep the green sand from sticking to the pattern. And last classification is the core sand. Core sand are commonly used for making mold core. So what's the purpose of mold core? Mold core, which is always used for making hollow casting. So core sand, which is used for making mold core. It is silica sand mixed with core oil. Commonly silica sand plus core oil, which is used for making core sand. So these are the different types of sand which is used in the sand casting process. So we have basically natural sand and green sand, and we have other classifications: green sand, dry sand, loam sand, facing sand, baking sand, system sand, parting sand, and core sand. Okay. So next one is characteristics of molding sand. Characteristics of a molding sand. So characteristics or properties of molding sand which is used in the sand casting molding process. There are 6 characteristics for a molding sand: porosity, flowability, collapsibility, adhesiveness, cohesiveness, and refractiveness. So first one, porosity. Porosity, it is also known as permeability. Porosity means it permits gases through it. The sand should permit gases to flow through it. When the mold cavity is filled with molten material, gases inside the mold cavity need to escape. Otherwise, it creates blowholes. See, during the casting process, the mold cavity will be filled with molten material. At that time, the gases inside the mold cavity should be escaped through the sand mold. If the sand mold is not permeable, it will not permit the gases to escape from the mold cavity. It will cause defect known as blowhole. Improper ramming. During sand casting process, we have ramming the sand. If the ramming force is higher, the permeability will be decreased. Next proper characteristic is the flowability. See, during sand mold making, it is important to get good impression of pattern in the sand. Flowability means sand must flow intricate corners and around the shape of pattern. During ramming, sand should flow to take required shape. So flowability is a characteristic of a sand which is used for making sand casting mold, which should flow easily around the pattern to form intricate corners and shape. Okay. Third one is collapsibility. This is a very important characteristic of a sand casting mold. Otherwise, if the collapsibility characteristic is less, there is a chance that the casting will be cracked. See, during the solidification process, the casting should be get shrink or volumetrically shrink. Due to that shrinkage, high stress will be produced. If this stress is not transferred to the sand casting mold and sand casting mold is not collapsed, the crack will be produced in the casting. So collapsibility means it is the ability of a sand casting mold to break itself during the solidification of the casting process. So when the molten metal cools, it contracts. If the sand does not collapse, the material will crack while solidification. Collapsibility is the ability to break itself or the sake of shrinkage of the casting. Okay. Then fourth characteristic is the adhesiveness. See, adhesiveness is sticking of sand particle over the mold wall. See, it is a capability of a sand particle to stick the mold wall, adhering to another particle of the surface. For this purpose, clay is adding to sand. Otherwise, the mold will break while handling. See, adhesiveness is one of the property of a sand which is used for the making sand casting mold. Adhesiveness means sticking the sand particle over the mold wall. Otherwise, what will be happening? There is a chance that the mold will break while handling. And fifth one is the cohesiveness. See, cohesiveness is the ability of sand particle to stick together. That's very important. The sand particles to stick together. Sticking of sand particle to each other, this property is used for retain shape of the mold after removal of the pattern from the mold. So due to this property, after removing the pattern, the shape will be retained. If cohesiveness is less, there is a chance that during removing pattern, the cavity will be get collapsed, damaged. So cohesiveness is the ability of sand particle to stick together. Sticking of sand particle to each other. This property is used for retain shape of the mold after removal of pattern from the mold. And last one is the refractoriness. That's very important point regarding the sand which is used for making sand mold. See, refractoriness is the ability of sand to withstand high temperature of molten metal without fusion. See, the sand that will be directly contact with the molten material, that is facing sand. So facing sand should always possess high refractoriness. If the refractoriness is very less, what will be happen? The sand undergoing melting and it will fuse with the molten material over the surface of the casting. Okay, so refractoriness is the ability of sand to withstand high temperature of molten metal without fusion. If the sand fuses, it could burn into the molten metal. It will distort the shape of the mold and casting. So sand which is used for the sand casting mold making should have sufficient refractoriness. Otherwise, it will fuse due to the high temperature of molten material sticking over the solidifying casting and will produce some defects. So these are the characteristics of the sand which is used for making sand casting mold. So we have mainly 6 characteristics: porosity, flowability, collapsibility, adhesiveness, cohesiveness and refractoriness. So I am wind up in this section. So in this video I have discussed what are the different types of sand which is used for sand casting mold making and what are the characteristics of the sand which is used for making sand casting mold. Okay, thank you.